rest of today.
Yeah, thanks, comrade.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
It is my turn if I can start my video. Hey, yo. All right. Thanks again, comrades, for that enlightening discussion there. As we transition, I think it's important and impactful that y'all left off on the subject of education and the importance of education and doing anti-propaganda work. I think it ties nicely into our next subject, and where I'll be starting speaking about Fred Hampton and the Rainbow Coalition. Fred Hampton was a member of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. At the age of 21, he was the chairman of the Illinois chapter and the deputy chairman for the National Party. Fred Hampton was an insanely talented orator and organizer. He had a out of this world ability to build coalitions and alliances with people of all ideologies in the working class, essentially. He was truly an advocate of people's revolution, a true proletarian revolution, and as so banded and demanded allyship, or not allyship, because that's watered down at this point by liberal politics, but he was good at finding and creating accomplices to join in the act of working class revolution. And a large part of that was his emphasis and belief, as well as the party's emphasis and belief on education first. As in fact, I do have a clip that I'm going to share here from Chairman Fred speaking of the importance of education while meeting with another organization that wanted to partner with the Panther program. So give me just a second here. Production. Yes, Sharon, can you see?
I can see it.
Okay.
Yes, Sharon.
So I need to just play.
Yes.
You basically knowing my ideology, basically, you can support some of our programs. Is that what you're saying? Why not? And we believe in programs like the Breast of Children program and feed up clinics. Right on, brother? We believe they're good things. As a focal point to organizing mothers and fathers.
Will it help you to see what you look like?
It would help me.
There's no educational program here.
I could see myself on there.
We can't put everything on one piece of paper. What about this bank? Credit union? Credit union. Credit union, my brother. Are you hip to credit unions? It is a bank. You go and buy money? Yeah, it's a bank. It's owned by the people, run for the people, and by the people. What would money be given out to people for? Well, the people would decide that. You want to buy, whatever, the people in the community decide. You need some living room furniture, maybe? You need a car, maybe? See, the thing is with me, I need to know some more about it. I wish you had some more literature about the education thing. Because as far as we're concerned, the struggle, when you look at struggle, is that this depends on the educational thing, because this depends on the education. Well, the whole thing. No, but in the end, this does. You can form this with no education. You form this. Yeah. No, not the way we talk about forming. Right. We're talking about forming it, right. It's not on the paper. We didn't write it on the paper. Form the right for new education. Now, let me give you an example. Yomo Kenyatta formed the Excellent Revolution with no education. And then at the end thing,
The movie?
Yomo told the motherfuckers that, well,
Did it
even hate the enemy, but I'm your brother. I let him be revolution. Now I'm more fresh. Another example, Papa Doc in Haiti. Papa Doc in Haiti hated everything white. Man, you couldn't put the white people in front of Papa Doc's face, but he moved all the white people out and he took over and be a president. He did, cause no education. And the people that have been educated, they said that we don't hate the motherfucker white people, we hate the oppressor, whether he be white, black, brown, or yellow. We got to know the education program to find out what is going to be in the finale. A lot of people were. Yomo Kenyatta is called not a method-revolutionary, but an ex-revolutionary. So it's Papa Doc. They brought on successful revolution. That thing in under my eyes was the best. Spanish freedom fighters, all that kind of action. What we're saying is the end. But you don't judge Castro now. You can't do it. Nobody in this room can judge whether Castro's going to be a revolutionary or not. You know what I mean? We're talking about things, you know what I mean, with China, the People's Republic, and even as the states in here now, talking about even going on further into a communistic state. That's what we're talking about. Those are revolutionaries. So we got to understand here the educational program that you have to be able to figure out whether it will go on the right lines where the people will end up in a situation where they can be able to really control themselves. You understand what I'm saying? With no education, the people take this local foundation and start stealing money because they won't be really educated to why it's the people thing anyway. You know what I'm saying? With no education, you have neo-colonialism instead of colonialism, like you got in Africa now, like you got in Haiti. So what we're talking about is there has to be the educational program. That's very important. As a matter of fact, it's so important for us that a person has to go through 6 weeks of our political education before he can consider himself a member of the party, able to even run down ideology for the party. Why? Because if they don't have the education, then they're nowhere. You know what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. You might get people caught up in the emotionalist movement. You understand me? You might get them caught up in because they're poor and they want something. And then if they're not educated, they want more. And before you know it, they'll be Catholic. And before you know it, we have Negro imperialism.
I don't know.
Passive income business that
what
allows
that is,
you to be free. You probably.
All right, and okay, cool. And we're back. So yes, again, part of the reason that we're doing things like Revolution School is for exactly what Chairman Fred was alluding to there. Without education, you cannot maintain a revolution because inevitably you will no longer have a system for the people. The people have to know why things are structured the way that they are and how those structures benefit the people and are held in power and in place by and for the people. Otherwise, you just end up with a new oppressive class, a mutated and evolved oppressive class, which again is why being a revolutionary and engaging in revolutionary action involves a life of struggle, struggling against the oppressor, struggling against the oppressive class, struggling alongside the masses with the people. If you have that education, if you have that foundational knowledge that it is you and your brothers and the masses, regardless of hue, regardless of creed, regardless of spiritual belief, then the petty things, the divisive mechanics and mechanisms that have been given to us by the oppressive class, by the capitalist class, such as racism, sexism, xenophobia, transphobia, and all these other things that are meant to divide the proletariat. Emotions won't get in the way when there's conflict with your comrades. There's no way that you can have a situation where you have the criticism that we commonly see against groups like the protesters in the current people's uprising that's happening against the state and state violence, where people say things like, hey, you know, I really would support them, but I can't get behind rioting and looting. If you are a member of a true proletariat revolution, then you recognize that how you feel individually about someone's means of revolt, about someone's means of revolution cannot dissuade you from being a part of that cause. Fred Hampton was especially gifted at one of the ways he was able to build the Rainbow Coalition was by being gifted at really breaking down those barriers and really showing how the things that divide the working class are made up. They are there simply to prevent us from gaining power. It's the reason that he was able to have such a successful partnership and successful coalition with such various groups and to differing groups. Specifically in the Rainbow Coalition, you have the Young Lords, who started off as a Puerto Rican street gang that became a civil rights organization after basically being at the hands of police brutality and being victims of the state. And of course, gentrification, being pushed out of their homes and neighborhoods, which is the same thing that you see happening now in urban areas, especially in larger cities. The Young Patriots, which were a group of working class white people up in the mountains in the Appalachians, which I think is still, these are people who traditionally never would have been in a room with with members of the Black Panther Party. But because, they were able to, Fred specifically was able to demonstrate working class solidarity and get that buy-in with them, that emotional investment, that recognition of having a part of this fight as well as being affected by all of these things as well. They were able to get past some of the more common obstacles that could have prevented that. So, and I think specifically when you're looking at, and of course, and also the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, which is a vanguard revolutionary party for the people, by the people, which exists to provide solutions and protections in places where the oppressive governmental systems are failing to do so, which is where you get things like the Black Panther educational program, the free breakfast program, the free health clinics, and the community watch, where they would forcibly prevent police brutality whenever necessary by protecting the people from the pigs that exist to oppress the people. Now, when you talk about the alliance specifically in regards to the Panthers and the Young Patriots, I think as we are recognizing and working on our Southern Tri-State Coalition, between the three poorest states in the country, which is Mississippi, Arkansas, and Tennessee, we want to be very cognizant of our white working class comrades and the extra decolonizing that is going to take to get them to see their part in the fight. As we know as Basil and Cole and Jeremiah just kind of spoke about, with the propagandizing that's happened, we've gone from anti-communist or still anti-communist and anti-socialist propaganda, but specifically after desegregation, you see the Southern strategy becoming to be a major part of conservative and right-wing politics, which of course is all things that couch racism and anti-Blackness and white supremacy into these kind of bland economic terms. So that type of dog whistling has taken place to prevent or to convince specifically white working class Southerners to vote against their best interests, to vote against working class policies that would benefit the working class, all under the guise of essentially closeted white supremacy, which again, we know is just a ploy of the capitalist bourgeoisie class. So again, one of the things that Brother Fred was very, very good at, very persuasive about, was speaking truth to power, was directing the burden of responsibility and the burden of blame to where it belongs, which is the oppressive class, as well as constantly reinforcing and re-impeding the solidarity necessary for the working class. I do have another clip that I'm going to play here from Brother Fred before I get into the 10-point program and its similarities with some of the demands that are being made by BLM and other organizations today. So just a second. I will get that queued up. I gotta share screen first. Oh, no sound. Yeah. Oh, just a second, y'all. There we go.
From coalition of anybody that has revolution on their mind. We're not a racist organization because we understand that racism is an excuse used for capitalism. And we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people. And we're going to have to put it back in the hands of the people. That's saying that no matter what color you are, you're just only two classes. And that's saying there's a class over here and there's a class over there. And the reason that this class over here has never did anything to get this class off its back because this is lower, this is upper. This is the oppressed, this is the oppressor. This is the exploited, this is the exploiter. And these people in this class have divided themselves. They say, I'm black and I hate white people. I'm white and I hate black people. I'm Latin American and I hate hillbillies. I'm hillbilly and I hate Indians. So we fight amongst each other. We know they have our pictures, we know they're looking for us, we know they want us, but we're still saying that even though we could be in a sense, it's going to this physical goal on the mountaintop, we in the Black Panther Party, because of our dedication to understanding what's in the valley, knowing that the people in the valley, knowing that we originally came from the valley, knowing that our flag is the same flag as the people in the valley, knowing that our enemies is on the mountaintop, our friends in the valley, we say even though it's nice to be on the mountaintop, we're going to die to the valley. Every day. I be in the streets propagandizing every day. I be working with everybody every day. I be teaching that
Everybody just sitting on this list.
the end of the complete wipeout of materialism is the thing. So if you're going to be thinking about me, that's what Bible will be teaching. If you're going to be thinking about us, all we say is we don't, ain't no thing about going nowhere, getting killed. All we want to know is that you're doing what we'd be doing if we were here. That you got to do this. You can't do it unless you believe that you can do it. Now, we say all power to all people. We say white power to white people. Brown power to brown people. Yellow power to yellow people. Black power to black people. X power to those that we left out. We say Panther power to the Vanguard Party. When you leave here, you know what I'm saying? The last word, before you go to bed, next time I'm a revolutionary. Make that the last word. In case you don't wake up, then somebody might believe it, and you might end up in what they call a revolutionary happy hunting ground. Say that. But I am a revolutionary. If you not speak Christ, speak. If you dare struggle, you dare win. If you dare not struggle, goddamn it, you don't deserve to win. Let me say peace to you if you're willing to fight for it. Let me say it in the spirit of liberation. I've been gone for a little while. At least my body's been gone. You ain't got to see that. At least my body's been gone for a little while. But I'm back now, and I believe that I'm back to stay. I believe that I'm going to do my job, and I believe that I was born not to die in a car wreck. I don't believe I'm going to die in a car wreck. I don't believe I'm going to die for slipping on a piece of ice. I don't believe I'm going to die because I got a bad heart. I don't believe I'm going to die because of lung cancer. I believe that I'm going to be able to die what I was just the things that I was born for. I believe that I'm going to be able to die high off of people. I believe that I will be able to die as a revolutionary in the international revolutionary post-standard struggle. And I hope that each one of you will be able to die in the international post-standard revolutionary struggle and then be living. And I think that struggle is going to come. Why don't you live for the people? Why don't you struggle for the people? Why don't you die for the people?
Right on.
I can give you this $50,000,
or
I can actually show you
Wow. Okay. YouTube ad tried to join in there. But right on. So, to that point, as Brother Fred Hampton noted, and something that is very important, he was under no illusions about what engaging in true proletarian revolutionary action would look like, especially in the time that he was alive. He was dubbed in the FBI's COINTELPRO program as the Black Messiah, which was someone they feared would be able to unite the white working class with the Black liberation struggle and would be the greatest threat to the American governmental system ever. We have it on record from them saying that a people's struggle, a people's revolution, would undo the fabric of this country, of what this was built on. But even beyond that, Fred said that he would die as a revolutionary in the struggle for an international proletarian revolution. And it's important to consider that context as people in America, right? As people in one of the greatest imperialist nations on earth. No matter kind of what our individual identity is here in the States, we are a member of an oppressive class to another country, right? We are in a better position than any of the colonies that America has today, or any of the countries where we have an oppressive militaristic force. I'm going to go ahead and answer this question that was posed here in the discussion panel. Someone asked, how can we create a similar rainbow coalition in the present day? Good news, folks. If you made it to this webinar, you're in a real good place to join a budding one. The age of the digital age and interconnectivity has made these type of things much simpler, these type of coalition building much simpler. I've been engaging in, personally, education collaboratives with members in this webinar and others, as well as being involved in some community organizing and direct action organizing as well. And I think maybe 3 of us have met in person. So the simple answer is to essentially find people who are doing the work, find people who are engaging in the type of action that you'd like to engage in, and send them an email. And then from there, you just, align with other groups and other orgs and people doing mutual aid and or community action, and find ways that you can cross-pollinate and cross-promote each other and help amplify and signal boost each other. I hope that clearly answered that question. And if not, feel free to ask another clarifying question, and I got you. So moving forward, there is, to the power of Fred Hampton and the kind of intelligence apparatus that was devised against him. He did do jail time as a result of an open conspiracy, in addition to this is before the conspiracy that led to his assassination. He was sent to jail by the oppressive state apparatus, who set him up for a bogus burglary charge of an ice cream truck. And I think it goes to show the power of Fred Hampton and the Panthers Party for Revolution, the power of their propagandizing, the power of their ability to really be engaging in true systemic change, that even in the bogus story that they made up about Fred Hampton accosting this ice cream driver and stealing, 174 ice cream cones, even in their made up version of events, what he did was gave the ice cream away to the children in the neighborhood. Even when they had to make him a thief, even when they tried their best and they arrayed all of their governmental systemic powers against him, they still had to make him a hero as a thief, because that is how much of a person of the masses, of a people's leader, of a people's revolutionary that he was. So it goes to the power of the people and of organizing for the people, to show that if we stick together, if we're on code, if we stand next to each other and we actually practice these things that we're talking about and that we're learning about, then we can have a truly powerful force against the state and against the empire. I want to kind of, before closing, go over some of the specific things that have been asked for or that were asked for by the party and by the Rainbow Coalition in the Black Panther parties and their 10-point plan, and kind of show how those echo some of the demands that are being made by social activists of today as well. But before getting into that, I mean, the short version is, as far as the alliances, everybody's asking for land, bread, housing, an end to being drafted, an end to police brutality, and human rights to be respected through essentially socialist programs. But to be specific, the Black Panther Party platform, their 10-point program was, one, we want freedom. We want the power to determine the destiny of the Black community. Two, full employment of our people. 3, an end to the robbery by the white man of our Black community. 4, we want decent housing, fit for shelter for human beings. 5, we want education for our people that exposes the true nature of the decadent American society. We want education that teaches our true history and how our role in present day society. We want all Black men to be exempt from military service. I think that would be updated to all Black humans as of today. But we're going to recognize the language of 1966 for what it was. Number 7, we want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of Black people. Number 8, we want freedom for all Black men held in federal, state, county, and city prisons and jails. Number 9, we want all Black people, when brought to trial, to be tried in a court by a jury of their peer group or people from their Black communities as defined by the Constitution of the United States. Just that one demand would have prevented an entire generation of Black civil rights leaders and revolutionaries from being unjustly imprisoned, lots of whom are still in prison to this day. 10, we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. And as our major political objective, a United Nations supervised plebiscite to be held throughout the Black colony, in which only Black colonial subjects would be allowed to participate, for the purpose of determining the will of Black people as to their national destiny. Essentially, that last point is autonomy and the ability for self-reliance and self-government, especially considering the openly hostile relationship that the U.S. Federal government and state and local governments has had toward Black Americans. So just kind of to immediately follow that, I want to go over the policy demands for Black power, freedom, and justice that was started towards the beginning of the movement for Black lives, and leave commentary outside of that for outside of this. So the first demand is to end the war on Black people. So we demand an end to the war against Black people since this country's inception. There have been named and unnamed wars in our communities. We demand an end to the criminalization, incarceration, and killing of our people. When it's talking named and unnamed wars, that's of course things like the war on drugs and the three strikes law and all the other things that empower the prison industrial complex. We demand reparations for past and continuing harms. The government, responsible corporations, and other institutions that are profited off of the harm they've inflicted on Black people, from colonialism to slavery, through food and housing, redlining, mass incarceration, and surveillance. We must repair the harm done. And that aligns also with that 10-point from the Panther programs as well. To divest and invest, we demand investments in the education, health and safety of Black people instead of investments in the criminalizing, caging, and harming of Black people. We want investments in Black communities determined by Black communities and divestment from exploitative forces, including prisons, fossil fuels, police surveillance, and exploitative corporations. So essentially, again, these all tie to the same points. Ending the prison industrial complex, investing instead into restorative practices, mental health facilities, rehabilitation facilities, actually community-driven services such as educational and recreational activities, and also all the things that we know that prevents crime in our society, right? Basically just do the same shit that you do in the white suburbs. Economic justice. So we demand economic justice for all and a reconstruction of the economy to ensure Black communities have collective ownership, not merely access. Again, this speaks directly to putting the power in the hands of the people. And I also feel I need to be clear, again, since I am speaking towards the Rainbow Coalition and the importance of a united working class proletariat. Every single time that there has been progress for Black people in this country, every other group of people have risen, period. Whatever progress is made for Black people also affects everybody else, because the capitalist American experiment is specifically derived on anti-Blackness as the root system of oppression, right? From anti-Blackness, every other system of oppression is able to be refined and designed, but it all starts with chattel slavery, being the model to build what began to become wage slavery, and then all the other forms of discrimination and colonialism and anti-immigration and xenophobia and everything else. So though these are demands made specifically for Black people and Black community efforts, again, these are all things that will ultimately benefit the entire working class. Which goes to the next point of community control. We demand a world, to be able to see. We demand a world where those most impacted in our communities control the laws, institutions, and policies that are meant to serve us, from our schools to our local budgets. Here. Production is getting on me about where I'm positioning the camera, y'all. From our schools to our local budgets, economies, police departments, and our land, while recognizing that the rights and histories of our indigenous family must also be respected. So this goes back to even Christina's point in the first panel, that the concept of land ownership as we know it is specifically oppressive, and goes completely against the original spiritual practices and beliefs of the indigenous inhabitants of this land. There's no justice, and there can be no perpetual justice, at least, with the concept of land ownership in place, especially as it's designed now, with ownership basically meaning you renting it until the government decides to take it. And then the last demand is, once again, for political power. So it's a demand for independent Black political power and Black self-determination in all areas of society. We envision a remaking of the current US political system in order to create a real democracy where Black people and all marginalized people can effectively exercise full political power. So these are demands that came about 40-ish years. Almost 60 years after the 10-point platform. And you see a lot of the same demands still being made or still being asked for, which I guess in essence makes them the opposite of demands. These are all things that we need to, these are all things that have been advocated for, right? That have been asked for, that have been demanded from our current governmental structure through the electoral process. And every time that these demands are made or asked for, propaganda is used to scare specifically working class people away from them. It's called socialism or communism or whatever. And spoiler alert, it is those things, and that's okay. Your public school system is socialist. Your post service is socialist. your ability to call the pigs to come and oppress you is fucking socialist, because you don't got to pay for it, at least out of pocket, when you make the call. This whole, anything that works in this country that benefits people, it has socialist basis. So we have to begin the process of destigmatizing these ideas, because they're necessary and because they work. One of the beautiful things about Brother Fred and the Black Panther Party for Revolution and the Rainbow Coalition was that they were willing to draw a line in the sand between the state and the people. It was essentially, hey, look, we have these rights as humans on this land. You people, as the state, make it a habit and a practice of trampling over those rights. We're not going to allow it anymore. If you come across this line, if you come across the border between right and wrong, at that point, whether you are a police or any other type of person, you will be dealt with accordingly. And they were very effective at keeping the state on the proper side of that line as a result of that. And we have since, as a result of the COINTELPRO program, been giving a sanitized version of what revolution looks like, and are shunned away from anything that might sound like potentially being violent or destructive. And to that I say, existing in this system is to be confronted and affected by violence every day. And to respond to violence with violence, to respond to violence with defense, right? To respond to violence with the intention of stopping violence is self-defense and is in itself not an act of violence. And to that point, you don't have to, the only time you get to that point for a manner of defense is if you've been attacked. Which, as we've seen with the free clinic, with the free breakfast program, with the free educational collaboratives, attack is imminent from the state. So it's best to be prepared for it and be prepared for it with a united front, because that's the only way we'll be able to consistently defend and overthrow those oppressive powers. With that, I think I'm coming up on my time. So I'm happy to take any questions that are either on the chat or in the Q&A. And if not, we can prep for our next panel, which is going to be dialectal materialism, Mao, Freire, and revolutionary pedagogy.